Good morning, good afternoon to those joining us for our webinar today about the all-new customer journey. We will start our session today with a quick overview on the latest data and trends that we're seeing in the European markets. This will be hosted by Mark Haywood. After that, Sascha Dalig will take over and will be moderating our session with our experts. We can see on the screen here, we've got Sally Richards from RaspberrySky, we've got Jonathon from GLH Hotels, and Suzie from Carnation. Each of the different speakers will introduce themselves with a little bit of background and expertise prior to their conversation. And we'll also have a closing by Michael Hucho to wrap it all up. As you can see, I probably have seen already in the email send, and also can see at the bottom of the screen, we are going to be using Mentimeter today. We would like to ask you to open that on the second screen or a separate tool, because otherwise you might not be able to get easily back into the webinar, but please do participate. The code is 991374, as you can see at the bottom of the screen. And again, welcome. We hope this to be an interactive session, so feel free to ask any questions through the live streaming that's going on. And we'll try and answer those as good as possible. We've already got some feedback through the Mentimeter from yesterday's email, and we'll also be sharing that. So I'm going to hand it over to Mark, and we're going to start off with some of the data points of what we're seeing in Europe recently.
Thank you, Monique. Okay, so in theory, we'll be able to see my presentation any moment. So I'm Mark Haywood from RateGain Technologies, the SVP for Europe and North Africa. Prior to RateGain, I've been in the hotel industry, both technology and hotelier side, for the last 23 years. So today we're going to have a look at some data that we've put together via our RateGain labs. And the data that we're looking at comes from both the Disco connectivity switch that powers all of the major CRSs worldwide, and also the RateGain channel manager. So we're looking at a total universe of hotels for about 125,000. So it's quite a good scope to make some key decisions and insights from. What we can see on the screen, first of all, is our net bookings across Europe year to date. And I guess, I can skip most of this because it's not a surprise to anyone around what happened. So business was going quite well up until March. And obviously in March, when COVID kicked in, the European market died, basically, in the nicest way. What we can see, the blue bars going up are the gross bookings that were coming in per day. The orange bars that are going down are the gross cancellations per day. And then the red line that goes across is the trailing average of net bookings. So with the bookings and cancellations equalized out over that period. What we can see very clearly here, though, is on the second side of the screen that we're starting to see now an incline going upwards again. And what we can see that's coming from is from about the second to third week of May across the continent. We've now started to see this increase coming into play. And that really goes in line with when different government restrictions lifted hotel closure bans, travel bans, border controls, etc. In the last trailing 7 days, we've also noticed or witnessed a 200% growth versus the lowest dip back in March. So that's quite positive. On the distribution channel side, what we can see is that OTAs and tour operators are showing an increase in excess of that of the GDS channel. Mainly more leisure people are coming into play in Europe now, so there's more leisure bookings who would book traditionally via the OTAs, via tour operators, and maybe the GDS is slightly more corporate, so will come in at a later date. But that's across Europe at a continent level. And then we're going to have a look now on the broken out level. So when we look at Europe broken out into different regions, and I've debated this a lot across my own career, how many regions do you debate and divide Europe into? If we just look at these 6 here, then we can see there's some very different stories that are coming in. Benelux, which has had, on the top left of the screen, has had a very lighter lockdown experience, and we're opening things without restrictions a lot sooner than most markets, has started to see, once we've got into the month of May, a very steady increase, which has really ramped up throughout June and into July. And the Benelux market at the moment is trading at a very strong pace compared to the other European markets that we can see. When we go down to the bottom left, we can see Scandinavia was slightly slower with the pickup of trends of bookings coming in. But as we got into June, there was a very gradual increase. But as we get into July, things are really going up quite strongly again. Moving into the UK in the middle, what we can see, obviously, the UK hotel market has been closed out until the 4th of July, and really there's been very little movement in the last few months. But what I think is quite positive, and also being British, is quite positive to see that in the last couple of weeks, we can now see there is a pickup and the start of things can come back. And we assume that they will start to follow the trends of other markets. Italy, we can see at the moment, is with a very slow pace of pickup, but there is a very gradual upward bend. Iberia, where we've got Spain and Portugal, equally there we can see as of late May, the pace has started to pick up as we move into July. And then in the German-speaking markets, a very steady but very certain pace of pickup coming in. We've also noticed that for intra-European travel, what we can see is Germany, UK, and the Netherlands are the 3 countries and the 3 groups of travellers who are making the effort to go outside of their home market at the moment. So there's about 70% of people who are staying in hotels at the moment come from that exact domestic market. But then we're seeing the Germans, the Brits, and the Dutch moving outside of their markets in this early stage. When we go on to the next slide. Okay, so then on the next slide, we can now see the gross bookings across Europe. And these are really based around future demand indicators. And what we can see, just to say at the start, what we can see on the screen is April to December. So since the pandemic started, moving up until the end of the year. We're not included on here January, February, March, because the business in those months obviously were quite, normal business. But what we can see is once restrictions came in, there was a gradual pickup in May versus April. So April was one of the heaviest hit months. May, there was a gradual pickup. When we get into June, June was up 85% versus May. And July is the strongest month of the year to date from April to July. July, obviously, we're halfway through the month and we're showing a 3% increase on last month. But when we look at August and September, currently, we're seeing about 50% of the bookings that we have in July. But something that is really important to highlight here is we're seeing that based around the booking window and the pickup time and the lead time of business coming in. So in the last couple of months, we're trailing with a very short lead time. And this is on a pan-European level. On a pan-European level, there's very short lead time for bookings at the moment as people are waiting for different restrictions to get lifted. So we could see that August and September start to overtake July, but at the moment, we're about 50%. Then if we go on to the next slide, we can then see this broken down again, same gross bookings across the European regions, but broken out by those key different areas as we've got on here. So what we can see very quickly is that all of the regions across the continent have seen an increase from April to June. And in July, all regions, apart from Scandinavia and the German-speaking markets, have got the peak of their bookings. So Scandinavia and the German-speaking markets have got a 1 month delay, or 1 month ahead even, versus all of the other key markets that we've divided out into here. And as I mentioned before, we can start to see that really across the board, it's about 50% of bookings in August and September that we're seeing in July. And there are some regions such as the German-speaking DACH, Greece, Cyprus, Italy and France that have shown more bookings in September currently versus that of August. So that's the start, we believe at this point, of some of the corporate travel coming back in, having an impact. But I think as the hotel market is very dynamic and as we're seeing lots of different changes on a daily basis, if we looked at these statistics again in a week's time, 2 weeks' time, a month's time, we'd probably see a very different story again. This is a very quick insight into where we stand as of today on the 15th of July. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. That was, I think, very insightful and hopefully something that will lead to discussions for our expert panel coming up. I also noticed I forgot to introduce myself. I'll quickly do that, but and then I'll hand over to Sascha. So I'm Monique Jaspers-Wijn, working for Travelport now. And as Mark, I also have 20 plus years in the industry. I'm not going to say how many plus, just 20 plus is enough. Working in hospitality, in a variety of hotels, technology, and also in airline and travel business. So Sascha, the floor is yours, and enjoy the conversation.
Thank you very much, Monique. Welcome, everyone. Nice to be with you here. Just a short introduction of myself. I'm Sascha Dalig. As today, I'm a senior advisor of JEEVES by Robotise, providing service robots for the hospitality industry. I think something we can discuss later with the panelists. And as Mark just gave us a brief insight, thank you very much, Mark. I think we prepared some questions on Mentimeter, and I would love to have a glimpse look in there to have an idea where our audience is coming from. That was the first question we asked on Mentimeter, so probably we could have a look in there and see who is with us and where are you from at all. So on the next slide, we do see, well, quite nice. Big bunch of London in the middle of the screen. We do have Amsterdam, Frankfurt, Budapest, Munich, Madrid, Oxford, Manchester. Very British in here, right? Greece, Reykjavik. So I think we are quite pan-European. It is very nice as we do see what Mark just mentioned. Mark, I just got one question back. When you have an overall conclusion on what we saw right now, is there something you can name as recovery, or are we still in a panic mode? What is your conclusion of the overall figures right now?
At the moment, it's very early days for a lot of the markets. I think it's very interesting to look at Benelux, mainly because the Benelux restrictions were very different to, I think, the rest of Europe. And we can really see there's business going back into Benelux very quickly. It is coming from very specific sectors. And I think what we're seeing at the moment is there's an awful lot of domestic leisure business that we're seeing coming into the market, but that's because we're in the summer. So I really want to fast forward a couple of months and see what's happening in September.
Yeah, absolutely. So I would just love to talk to our panelists and give you a short introduction. I would have, or will have with me, Jonathon Liu from GLH Hotels. He's revenue and pricing strategist at GLH Hotels. I do have Sally Richards with me, managing director at RaspberrySky, and Suzie Thompson, she's vice president commercial at Carnation Hotels. All of you, I would love to have a short introduction of yourself with just 1 or 2 sentences describing yourself, please, before we go into the next Mentimeter slide and see what the audience is thinking, which kind of travel is coming back first and what are we doing next. So from the top left, I do have Sally Richards. Sally, would you like to start, please, with a short introduction?
Yes, thank you, Sascha. So, Managing Director of RaspberrySky Services. My background actually is travel and hospitality. So I have worked in a travel agency environment, airlines, tour operators, travel technology companies, hotels and repco companies in both the UK and also America. So a bit of a varied background.
Thank you very much, Sally. Next is on the bottom left of my screen is Suzie. Could you give us a short introduction, Suzie, please?
Sure. Hello, everyone. I've been with Carnation for almost 10 years. And my role is really to run the commercial department, so sales, marketing, revenue management, and PR. My background previous to Carnation was with Sabre Hospitality, working alongside Monique. And prior to that, I was with lastminute.com and IHG at the very beginning. So that's my background. And Carnation is a family-owned business with 20 boutique hotels in various destinations around the world. Some open and some not. But I'm sure I'll have the opportunity to talk about that later.
Thank you very much, Suzie. Last but not least, Jonathon, could you give us a brief information of who you are and what you're doing?
Thanks, Sascha. I've been with GLH Hotels a year today, so it's been great to be back in the UK. Prior to that, I worked with Accor Hotels and IHG across the UK, across China, Singapore, and Australia in a range of areas of sales, distribution, and marketing.
Thank you very much, Jonathon. And I've got one speaker to my right side on the screen. It's Michael Hucho. I got to know Michael for a long time. We have been working together with Accor, and right now we're here in this webinar. Michael is going to wrap up the session today for us, and Michael is one of the experts in hospitality industry management, change management. But just a few words from your side, Michael, before wrapping up at the end, please.
Hi, everybody. Pleasure to meet you all and you all again. Well, I used to be in hospitality industry for about 30 years, which is an astonishing number. I spent half of this time in operations and the other half, the later half, in digital business. I used to work for quite large hotel chains in e-commerce and loyalty, in CRM, in customer experience, and in distribution. And this is what led me to raise up my own business, michaelhucho.de, being a consultant for hotels chains to work more customer-centric.
Thank you, Michael. So if we're going to have another look on Mentimeter, and the first question we asked to the audience, it was, what do you think? What will come back first? Is it leisure or is it business travel? And yeah, we could have a look on your answers on the next slide. Something I think we agree all on. A majority of you all intend to the leisure business will be coming back first. I think that's something we do see in the markets right now. And the next question we raised directly afterwards is on the travel behavior. Will it be more domestic or more international? And it's quite clear what we do see here. All of you in the audience are thinking it's domestic travel. I would love to open the discussion with our panelists. How do you see the behavior of the guest? Is it only leisure business at these times? Is it only domestic travel? And what are your thoughts on these figures and on the data Mark shared earlier? So probably starting with Sally, giving us an insight. What do you think? Is it something you experience as well?
Well, I think that the survey kind of speaks for itself. Yes, the focus at the moment is very much on domestic and staycation market and destinations where people can drive to. I think seasonality has helped because we're straight into school holidays, particularly in the UK and in Europe. And I think people are looking to get away out of lockdown. There's a propensity to want to book things like apartments and Airbnbs because they are in control of the touch points of their stay. I think we're in somewhat of a optimistic bubble, seeing the recovery, because I think it's very much focused on the leisure market, and I think the corporate market's going to be more challenging.
Jonathon and Suzie, is it something you agree directly on? Suzie, you just told us some of the hotels are still locked, some hotels are open. What is your opinion?
Yeah, I mean, I echo what Sally says and what the numbers have given us. I think seasonality has been a help for the short-term cash flow of many UK businesses. The properties that we have in Dorset have never been busier. Kind of usually struggle to find people to go down there, but now it's having its best year yet. But you definitely see that kind of tailing off in September, and then we'll be back to a bit of a struggle again. In Ireland, interestingly, we've had huge success with the domestic market, which would typically and normally have enjoyed a lot of Canadian and American business at this time of year, but the domestic market has travelled. And a lot of the big properties over there have enjoyed some great occupancy for the summer. But again, when you get to September, it is a slightly different picture. London is a humongous challenge. We have 2 out of 6 of our hotels open. Obviously, occupancy looks like a nicer percentage when it's a small property. So we tend to go with those occupancy figures. But for the larger properties, it's a real challenge. I work in Victoria. I was there yesterday. There is nobody. There are no tourists. There are no business travellers. And there are very few guests for hotels to enjoy. Hence why I think that probably 30% has reopened in the luxury market. So it's a real challenge. And I think we have enjoyed some independent business travelers, but that tends to be consultants or people that work for themselves. I think large travel corporations, you know, they have a duty of care and a responsibility there. They can't be seen to be sending business travelers around the world at this point. And that's just the reality of the situation.
We're seeing the same for our hotels in London as well. I've only got 2 of 14 hotels open. I guess the biggest thing for us at the moment, with London being such an international market, is the lifting of the quarantine measures, which only happened a few days ago. So it's going to be a while until we see the return of those markets. And some of those markets are still under quarantine restrictions, like the US market, which is one of our biggest markets for a number of our hotels. So until we see, I guess, the pandemic coming under control across multiple regions, we're not necessarily going to see that recovery is strong in somewhere like London.
I think the other thing that's, sorry if I can just say as well, you know, linked to the whole corporate piece is the flights. You know, the airlines putting back on the frequency of flights and the confidence to travel. I think that's a big part at the moment, because even if the corporates wanted to travel, they can't get from A to B.
But absolutely right, agree on that, Sally. But how do you see the uplift going on at this time? Is it something native? Is it something that's just normal, it's seasonal? Or is it some people trying to run out of their houses after lockdown periods, going out, meeting family, meeting friends? So I do believe it's not business travel, or just a small piece of business travel. I do see the most travelers are leisure travelers, but is it something really native we experience year by year, or is it something extraordinary happening these days? What do you think?
I think there's a combination. I mean, school holidays have historically always been busy times, haven't they, where people have travelled, taken vacation time in July and August, particularly in Europe and you know, and in the UK. However, you've got pent-up demand at the moment. You've got people that have been restricted to their homes for a long period of time. So I think you're finding that there are people travelling domestically who would normally travel overseas, who are looking for experiences, you know, in their domestic market. I mean, we've got friends who are in Spain who have just taken a road trip across Italy, Switzerland, you know, and Germany because they can, they don't have to fly. So I think people are looking for alternative experiences, and I think the demand at the moment is higher for domestic than it's ever been, because of the restriction of travelling overseas and the fear of travelling overseas, you know, and the lack of flights and availability.
It's interesting, because in Asia they're calling this revenge travel. I just find that interesting term, revenge travel, because you've been stuck at home so long. Now you're taking revenge, and even if it's just domestic, but at least you're traveling, you're doing something. I had a colleague of mine who lives in Hong Kong who decided to stay a week in a hotel just to feel that she was at least on this vacation. At this point, it's about changing scenery, isn't it? It's just a change of, you know, the outlook of looking out of the same window, the same house, the same community, exactly. And just, you know, doing something.
So what do you think? Is it sometimes, and it's quite nice, Monique, that you're raising this point. Is it just traveling for traveling reasons? Jonathon, what do you think? Are there some guests just traveling for the purpose of traveling and being back on business?
It's all about experiences and wanting to have those experiences outside of your home. I mean, I'm desperate to go to a restaurant and have someone else put a plate in front of me rather than myself in my kitchen. It's those sorts of things that people really want, and unfortunately London, we still have a lot of experiences that aren't available. Our galleries and museums aren't open quite yet, the theatres aren't there quite yet, so it really comes down to that wider tourism broader picture to see when those things start to open, when you can have those experiences again. I think that's when people will choose to travel.
Yeah. So in that terms, we do raise the question on Mentimeter, asking the audience what they will think, what will come back first, traditional hotel or alternative accommodation travel. So it was something the hospitality industry was discussing within the last years. Is Airbnb a competitor? Is it some disruptor on the market? And on the next slide, we can see what your opinion was right here. And you said, well, traditional hotel will be the most bouncing back travel coming first. But we do see alternative accommodation. And coming to the next slide, We do raise the question, and it's completely alongside with what you just told. It's just one answer on the flights. So the most travel will come back by car or by rail, and it's something that will be very domestic, as you can't go overseas with a car, of course. I think we all agree on that. So I want to ask you, and there was just a note coming from a YouTube comment. When do you see international travel coming back? Do you have an idea, Suzie, of transoceanic travel? Do you have an idea of when it will come back and will bounce back to the hotels? As what Mark said in his presentation at the beginning, we are still on 50% booking level than it was before, right?
Yeah, I mean, obviously restrictions will dictate, but it's interesting because, like many hotels, you know, we've had to move guest bookings to future dates rather than sort of cancel where possible, and really encourage our guests to come back. And it's interesting to see what future date is kind of put in as a preliminary. And there's a lot, obviously, that's moved to 2021. Because a lot of the business for the summer would have been linked to Wimbledon or something going on that they want to then still have that experience and have to wait next summer for. But it's interesting, there's still a fair amount of American business still booking in for, you know, October, November, and just definitely for the festive season. And when you're engaging with guests through social media content and sort of sending email updates out to the database, you know, many guests do take the time to reply, and that gives you a really good sentiment of, I'm really sorry we can't make it this year, and this is mainly US guests I'm talking about, but we'll definitely be back in 2021. So I think there is going to be also pent-up demand for 2021, but I think 2020 is going to be a big struggle for the American market particularly.
Oh, I think it's not only for the American market, it's for the complete market, right? So, Jonathon, I don't know how your figures are, and we don't want to deep dive inside, but it's something we could see from Mark's data. So it's not what we expect normally, right? I've been to Munich this week and was asking the receptionist of how the behavior in the hotel is, and she was very happy and told me they were reaching an occupancy level they didn't expect so far. It was 20%. So it was something we would have closed down hotels years before if we would have an hotel running by 20%. What do you think about it, Jonathon? And what do you think of bouncing back international travel? At what period could you expect it?
We're seeing some really positive trends for very early in 2021, but for the rest of 2020, it is quite dire. There's not a lot of business coming through. Even looking at the festive season, there's not a lot that is coming there, but looking at early into next summer is very, very strong. A lot of the events have reconfirmed for next year that were cancelled this year, and particularly in London, next summer will be a very, very event season with lots of sporting events, lots of concerts, and all the usual activities that go along with a normal summer here. So next year, very, very positive. This year, it's going to be a very slow build-up.
How do all of you, and probably Sally, you can give me a hint, how do you see the power of direct bookings these days? Is it something we should push as a hotelier on it? So I do see some innovations on that, some old actions bringing back up to push direct business, pushing the business back from the OTA, from travel agents back to direct hotel business. Is it something you experience as well and would suggest to do for the hotels?
I think if I could just pick up as well, Sascha, I think in terms of 2020, I think we're going to see booking behaviours changed. I think you're going to see that people will book a lot later. So I think the booking window is going to change. So whilst Jonathon and Suzie are not seeing such good performance at this point in time for the end of the year, I wonder whether, you know, as we move through the months, whether the pickup will be very, very much more later. In terms of your question on direct bookings, absolutely. One of the studies I saw last week from Amadeus was that in terms of overall channel mix, obviously GDS is down, that's the corporate kind of booking channel, but actually the increase is not really being picked up so much with the OTAs, but really through direct business to the hotels. Okay. So I think people who want to travel are maybe not necessarily finding all of the information on brand.com to reassure them about booking online. They are wanting to pick up the phone. They are wanting to have the conversations about, is the restaurant open? What can my experience be like? What can I do in the local area? So I think there's a massive opportunity now to drive that direct booking and also brand.com, but also be aware that you're also still going to have a business mix as demand picks up. So this is not about cutting off any specific channel. It's about having an equal opportunity across all channels, but at this time, really leverage your brand.com and have people that can answer the phone and answer the questions that your guests are going to be asking.
We did a poll on this with Mentimeter. So the next slide we prepared was a question to the audience. How do they see the customer demand and expectation? And I think it's in correlation with what you just said to the own homepage, to the brand homepage. The blue line, I think it's not clear to read. People will only stay at hotels again if there are strict Corona guidelines. I think something all of us expect right now to know what the hotel is preparing, what they are doing, and how should I behave within the hotel. It's the majority of the audience going to this point. The yellow one, which is the second highest row, people will only book direct with their trusted brands. Something I think we can experience with all loyalty cards, and maybe I just jumped to one of the panelists, Jonathon. What do you think of direct bookings by trusted brands, by loyalty guests? Is it the majority of guests being in your hotels right now?
At the moment, we are seeing that. It is our return guests. It's people who've been with us before and coming directly back to us. But I think that will change over the next few months. I think as much as we want to try and push as much direct business as possible, all channels will be open, and we'll be working with our partners to get in front of as many customers as physically possible to attract them to our hotels. I think it's really important to have that broad distribution right now to make sure we're getting to the widest audience possible.
Mm-hmm. And Suzie, and at the beginning of the pandemic, I did see some OTAs, some partners that did not really act and behave as partners. So they did set up their own regulations, they set up their own rules, and asked the hotels to cancel reservations earlier than the hotels did react. How did you deal with them now, and how did you deal with them at that time? Could you give us an insight?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's only one way to work with any partner, and that's in partnership. So of course, sometimes, you know, I think throughout all of this, we've had to learn and change and adapt every day as marketing professionals, as online travel agents. And I think we got there in the end. And I think, you know, it's to Jonathan's point, it's about not falling out. It's about working together. And, you know, the channels are building out new areas of content on the site to support reassuring messaging around what properties are doing for COVID-19, etc. Most of the bigger OTAs have some sort of campaign, whether it's arguably for PR or not, but there are campaigns out there to support the hotels as much as possible. They also have access to an incredible amount of data, which they are very willing to share. So there's a lot of information there that hotels can take advantage of in terms of understanding future trends. But going back to your earlier point, I mean, with direct business, you know, we have a very loyal customer base, being a family-run business that's been around for 100 years. And certainly what we found is a lot of support from our regular guests. So when you say guests will go for kind of big brands that they know and trust, I think that's kind of incorrect. I think they will go for brands that they trust, but it doesn't have to be, you know, IHG, Hilton, and just if you've got a loyalty club. I think it's about people going and wanting experiences in hotels where they know that the standards will be high. They perhaps already know the people there. They're able to reach out and have that conversation and be reassured. And I think the luxury travel advisor segment in the US will be more important than ever, because people are going to want that level of support to make travel into Europe or all around the world. So engaging with the travel agent community during this time is also key for the luxury sector.
Thank you, Suzie. So having a look at our live comments, there's a very nice question raised, and I would love to pass it on to you. Is it full recovery possible without a vaccine? So don't know who wants to answer. Any one of you like to pick this? Is a full recovery of our business possible without a vaccine? What do you think?
I don't think we will ever go back to what was normal. We are going to be entering into a new normal, and there'll be a bit around all the different behaviors. I mean, we've got so used to being on Zoom, on all these different virtual meetings that will change our behaviors. The way we purchase also will change our behaviors. So I think we will recover. We will recover without a vaccine, but it will be a very different normal to what it was before.
Suzie, something to add from your side?
No, I mean, I agree. I think that we've all changed. You know, the world has changed. I think that we will recover over a long period of time in terms of if we're talking about recovery as being profitable again. But I think, yeah, booking patterns will change. You know, nobody's kind of requesting prepayment anymore. So we've got to basically expect that half of our demand can, as much as it might be a last minute booking, can be a very much a last minute cancellation. And I think, you know, we're going to have to adjust our revenue and distribution strategies, and basically the revenue management instinct that used to be there. I think that we probably have to move on from that now, because it is going to change in terms of patterns. But you know, we're a strong industry, and I think certainly from it's about just hanging in there at the moment, but not leaving anything untouched. I mean, in terms of engagement from a CRM point of view with the people that do love and trust you, you know, it would be marketing suicide right now to not be doing even more marketing to that group of people than you did before, and more social media than you ever did before. Even if the guests aren't able to come in the short term, you still want your hotels to be the first choice when they come back in 21 or 22 or 23.
Absolutely. So Sally, we had one point, the major point on our Mentimeter poll. It was the Corona guidelines. What would you suggest for a hotel to set up as guidelines? What would you suggest to behave within the customer journey? So I think we need to be very aware not to lose contact to the guest all the time, even if you have a plexiglass or fiberglass or anything in front of you, to protect yourself. So what are your suggestions to good Corona guidelines?
Good Corona guidelines, gosh. Well, I think you have to comply with the guidelines that have been sent by the government bodies. There are a number of accreditations that you can take. So Visit Britain in the UK has one, and some of the channels have developed their own. You know, guidelines. If you go on TripAdvisor, you can search by those that are compliant to COVID-19 standards that TripAdvisor has set. So I think that those kind of things are really important. I had a couple of clients actually that approach this quite differently in terms of what's the on-property experience. I think there's a fear that walking into a hotel could become like walking into a hospital from a sanitization and you know, experience perspective. So I have one client who really is very anti the big circles, the 2 meter distance things on the floor, and that the guidelines are sort of implemented in a more elegant way. And you see some brands doing that. I think like the Pigs, the homegrown hotels are doing that very well. So I think I think we have to ensure, I think brands and hotels have to ensure that not only are they saying that they're following the guidelines, but they show that they are actually following the guidelines. One of the research studies came out last week from the US to say that actually there's an increase in negative reviews from guests that are staying at hotels, and the prime driver of that is around hygiene. So I think it's one thing putting the badge on and saying you're doing it. I think you've actually got to practice it and make sure you absolutely are doing it, so people have that trust and confidence, and look at your reputation management to make sure that, you know, you're answering all the queries and questions and that you're shown to be really proactive. I mean, we're all learning here. Do you know what I mean? It's all very new.
And I think training is really key as well of staff, because, you know, what you don't want to have is service delivery that is not warm and welcoming because the staff are too afraid to go near the guests. So you have to really invest in that side of it to ensure that actually the guests feel like they're getting more, not less, when they come back to stay with you.
A great
I think the communication also is each country has its own guidance. So what someone is used to it at 1 meter, someone else is used to it 2 meters. So being very clear of what the expectation will be for the stay is really important to make it safe for everyone, no matter what country they're coming from.
I would love to share an experience I got last week. So you hear I'm traveling already. It's domestic, of course, it's Germany only, but I've been in a hotel last week for 3 days. When coming to the hotel, it was absolutely clean. And it was more hospital clean than anything else. There was no team member waiting for me at the reception. It was quite strange. They were coming out of the back office. They told me when checking in that no room service has to be expected for the 3 days, that they were not allowed to clean up the rooms for guests staying for more than 1 day. That was quite okay for me, as they offered me some extra service like extra pillows or towels at the reception at my own service. They did not offer any breakfast service, no room service, or some menu, or even an idea of being outside of the hotel, having a bakery or anything. I had no bar, and it was quite strange for me being in there. A hotel I used to like, a hotel I like to be in, but it was quite strange. What is your experience, and what are your thoughts, Jonathon? What are you doing to not let a guest run into a situation like this?
It's a lot of communication before arrival as well, and really setting expectations and letting them know what we do have on offer so they can prepare in advance. We're trying to be as flexible as possible within the government guidance, and that guidance changes every other week. So it's also trying to get our teams up to speed and to be able to communicate that effectively to our customers.
Suzie, anything to add from your side? Probably some digitalization aspect to add from your side. Is there anything you can do to ensure a good customer journey throughout this process in Corona times?
I mean, from a digital point of view, I mean, pre-stay has always been a massive part of what we've done anyway, in terms of anticipating what our guests would want. And I echo Jonathon's point on that. It's even more important now. From investing in change, I mean, we've set up online check-in, and nobody's using it. Nobody wants it. It's amazing how much we all think guests want things and they don't. And it depends on the type of hotel and guest, of course, as well. But from a service offering, again, it's just the training. You know, if a guest goes to shake your hand as a staff member, you need to know how to not shake that person's hand, but also not offend the guest. And it's like so many of those different touch points that need to be worked through with the teams. And if you're taking away buffet breakfast, which is something we've done, you know, you need to really make sure that a la carte offering is amazing. So there's so much operational opportunity, I think, to exceed guest expectations, but it takes, you know, a lot of work. And I'm sure, along with my fellow hoteliers, you know, that's a lot of what we've been doing over the last sort of 3 months while the hotels have been closed, is working through that guest experience, because you do all the marketing you like. But to your point, you've just completely explained the hotel experience that nobody wants, and also people won't return to. And that's definitely not what we want to happen right now. So it's for all of us to make sure that the hotel experience is brilliant, to give better reviews online, to encourage others to travel.
Great. We asked on Mentimeter on the audience, to the audience, what are their expectations to leverage technology during the different touch points of the customer journey. And we do have 2 major points coming out there. It is the new customer journey will be more contactless. And the second point in blue is technology will be the key for the new customer journey. Is it something you can agree, Sally?
Sorry, I can't see that slide actually.
Yeah, I try to read it for you.
We're still on the old slide. We need to move to the next one.
I thought we had a different one in mind, and this time, so it was my fault. Sorry. Yeah, this one. Okay. The blue one, technology will be the key to the new customer journey.
Yeah, I think to Susie's point, really, that I see technology as being an enabler, and I think for years we've spoken to hotels about automating their processes and being more efficient. And I don't think that's really changed. What's really key is the customer experience and how you overlay that. So absolutely, at this time, you know, contactless payment, contactless check-in. The ability for guest services to contact you through your own device and phone. And those kind of things are really important. You know, technology that enables you to order your food or see an online menu and make that order and, you know, make that payment. All of this technology is available. And I think it's really down to how the brands implement it and use it and wrap that around the experience. So yes, I think it is incredibly important, but it always has been incredibly important. It's just really elevated itself now to being number one on the list in terms of, you know, opportunity to social distance and to, you know, help the customer feel comfortable. But the overlaying of the experience, you cannot underestimate that. Otherwise, you have a very clinical experience like you had, Sascha.
Yeah,
also a experience that doesn't make any sense. I mean, I went to a restaurant on Saturday and the waitress spent 5 minutes telling me how I needed to now go to the QR code and make an order online. And I'm thinking, well,
could take an order
in this time. It's just annoying. So I think we just need to be very careful with, yes, give choice, and totally agree with everything Sally said. But if we're, again, not training our teams, or we're just looking, we could end up looking a bit stupid by trying to implement things that actually don't do anything for guest well-being. It just irritates them.
Mm.
Right, Jonathon, question to you. Yeah, it directly comes after Susie's point with a messy digitalized process. If we do have an outdated process within our hotels, should we digitalize it, or should we skip the process completely and go to a new one? What do you think?
I think this is the prime opportunity to rethink all our processes. And I think some of the mistakes that are made in the past is where you actually digitalize a process, but you glorify the process rather than getting rid of the process. And I think if we can adapt to the behaviors of our customers rather than forcing our customers to behave differently, that's the key. I think some of what we've heard is waitresses telling us what we have to do. No, that shouldn't be the way. It should be, here is a way that we can adapt to how you feel and make you feel more secure and safe, rather than saying you have to order through this QR code. It's just how that delivery is made, and not to glorify a process.
Thank you very much. Yeah, absolutely. Highly agree on that. Having a look at the time, we gave ourselves 60 minutes. We have 50 minutes in our webinar. It's a very nice discussion. I like to round it up and ask all the three of you in a short sentence, what is in your eyes a good customer experience after COVID-19? Starting with Suzie, maybe.
What is a good experience? Sorry.
What is a good new customer experience you would suggest after COVID-19? Yes.
I just think brands and hotels, you know, we have to demonstrate that we have followed the right protocols. So in our instance, we've followed the World Travel and Tourism Council protocols and implemented everything there. We've also invested in a clean coat solution, which is basically a self disinfecting coat that you spray throughout the property and lasts a year, for example. And there was a question I saw on around sustainability, which I think is something to discuss, and maybe not today, but absolutely, we all need to find solutions that are not refilling our hotels with single-use plastic again to be providing masks, sprays. We need to find sustainable solutions to the hygiene and well-being of the properties longer term, which often require investment, which is obviously a struggle for cash flow right now. But I think the main thing is that guests are warmly welcomed back, that service delivery is better than it's ever been, to reassure, and that we just are able to provide an experience that is better than what they would have at home. Otherwise, what's the point?
Thank you. Great. Thank you. Yeah, I think it's very necessary. Jonathon, anything to add from your side, or do you have a different point of view?
I think flexibility and agility is really key. People will have different expectations on what safety means to them. So by understanding what that means and how you deliver that, it has to be different to every customer that comes through your door. So understanding the customer's needs is first and foremost, and being able to respond to that flexibly is very, very important.
Okay, thank you. Sally, wrapping up this round, two questions to you. What do you think about sustainability? A question coming from the audience. Is it something we must rethink of guest amenities in the rooms?
Yeah, I think sustainability is really important. I think, you know, we've transitioned out of that sort of focus into survival mode, and a lot of the, you know, the single-use face masks, the plastics and everything has risen again, and we do need to find a solution for that. So I think just to the previous point, I think in terms of what does good look like, I think we need to be creative about the experiences. I think, you know, we need to listen to the customers and use reputation management to do that. And we need to use technology as an enabler to delight the guest, and we need to just be easy to do business with. So I think, you know, it's back to the same old messages, but yes, to your point, sustainability is a real issue now.
Okay, thank you. So let's have a look on Mentimeter for the last time. We did raise the question, what does good look like? Which must be the next slide. So just have a look, it's coming up. And it's something you just mentioned, yeah, and the audience is as well. Key focus will be on the customer experience, something I think we all very much agree on. Profitability, something we need to achieve to survive this situation. And with this last look on Mentimeter, I thank you very much, Sally, Suzie and Jonathon for this discussion, for this 45 minutes time spending together discussing around COVID-19. Mark, thank you very much for the insights at the beginning, and it's my pleasure to head over to Michael Hucho to wrap up our session for today. Michael, stage yours.
Yes, thank you, Sascha. Wow, what a great session. The all-new customer journey. That was a great HSMAI webinar today. And after all that great input, it's quite tough to make a short summary. I'll do my best. I try to do my best. Thanks to Monique, Mark, Jonathon, Sally, Suzie, and of course to you, Sascha, our moderator, but also behind the scenes to Benedicte and Enzo, and very much to Ingunn, the president of HSMAI Europe today. What are the key takeaways today? I think it is clear that the corona pandemic impacts our industry and our personal life the deepest most of us ever experience. There is no old normal, and there is a business impact on all the segments and channels in corporate leisure, groups, meetings, on demands. The customer behavior, his desire, the expectations change quickly, but sustainability is going to be, and trust, the key currency of tomorrow. The customer changes, and we as in our organizations will have to change most probably too. We look deeply into the business. I think many of us are happy to see an upward movement in bookings in the European markets. It is slow, but it seems steady so far. Today we are about 50% below last year booking volumes for the coming months. This growth is captured by OTAs, but also GDS. But I think today it was very, very clear for us all that there is a strong domestic and leisure focus, and we tend to still be unclear about the corporate market. Thanks very much to Mark having the figures for us from RateGain and Disco. Mentimeter brought us a lot of impact and information insight today of all you participants that spent some time for us today. What was interesting for me the most was that alternative accommodation tends to play a big role. So Airbnb, but maybe also camping, is on the rise. Interesting to see that people prefer to travel by car, but they seem to trust on brands. So loyalty will have a great impact on direct business. Looking to the all-new customer journey, just to sum up, the key impacts on before the journey are: the desire to travel comes back. Monique, you mentioned the revenge travel syndrome, which I think is very interesting. Sally, you said people tend to book later. I think many of us can confirm. And we all agreed that conversation via web, phone, mail is very important as a strong opportunity to drive direct business. Looking on during the journey, people are desperate. Jonathon, you said that, to experience a life outside of their home after the lockdown. So trust does play a key role. And yes, we need Corona guidelines, and we need to show that we all execute them well, because contactless travel will have a key impact in the future. Finally, after the journey, we are all agreeing that CRM measures become more and more important, and guest reviews will focus more on hygiene, but also on sustainability. Okay, that was it. To close the session, thank you all very, very much for participating in the HSMAI webinar today. Just as a short remark, all panelists remain open today for coming questions, so feel free to get in touch with us all. And make sure that you stay connected with HSMAI Europe, follow us and follow the key trends in the industry, and of course meet the key experts of our market, such as we did today. So to conclude, that was a great session. Thank you all and have a great day.